And we're live with another episode of Adventures in DevOps. Warren, what's going on?
I wish I had something good to say, because you put me on the spot there. I guess I can lead with my fact.
Right, my fault for asking you how you're doing. My
Yeah, I
bad. I should
know.
have known better.
Yeah, I know. It's been quite a number of episodes already. I feel like you really got to square that away before the episode starts. I will say I was a little bit disappointed by this, but I found out recently that there are companies that leak their data on purpose. They use it as an advertisement strategy, so people learn about the company, and so VCs can learn about them and potentially buy them later because it's such a great turnaround to say, "Hey, we had security problems in the past, but then we fixed them." So if you see on your LinkedIn stream or social media accounts some company saying, "Oh no, this hotel chain or healthcare provider leaked all their patient records," it may have been an intentional strategy just so that you will learn about them and then maybe start paying them money in the future.
I can only say that I'm disappointed but not surprised. But also joining us today, I'm super excited about this episode because I've been following today's guest for quite a while through on 90 Days of DevOps and through all of your posts on X. So, Michael Cade, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, our pleasure. And I'm excited. So, for those who maybe have never logged on to Twitter, because I think that's the requirement to start seeing your posts, is just actually log on. So for someone who's never been on there, give us like the short version of your background.
So the posh title is a field CTO at Veeam Software. If you know Veeam Software, we focus on protecting workloads here, there, and everywhere. And what I mean by that is we started off with virtualization backup and then got into cloud-based and SaaS-based and even Kubernetes-based backups. So running stateful workloads, running databases, you name it, we'll protect it type thing. And the important part is backup is the boring part, the recovery is the easy part. But I guess more to the point where you came in, Will, was around a project that I started kind of as we came out of or even the last year of the pandemic, was 90 Days of DevOps. And if you go to 90daysofdevops.com, it was really about learning in public, like being vulnerable and putting some structured learning out there. It never was intended to be as big as this to help as many people. It was there to help me. It started out as my notes, right? Which my Twitter is a graveyard of notes, really, that I'm just shouting in my own little bubble. But yeah, been in the infrastructure world for 20 years. I would say the last 3 to 5 years has been focused around DevOps and then more recently around cloud and cloud native. So yeah, definitely listening to the podcast and taking a lot in. So yeah.
Right on. So 90 Days of DevOps was your like learning in public thing, but that's been more than 90 days ago. So what's the current state of that?
Yeah, so we started in 2022, I think it was, and that was me going through the weird roads of DevOps, if you will, and I didn't want. Like, I'd seen loads of people do 100 days of code or 100 days of Kubernetes and 100 days of this and 100 days of cloud, and I was like, I can't concentrate for 100 days. I can't do that. And DevOps isn't. You can't do it. Like, DevOps isn't just one area, right? As you all know. So I took that concept of 90 days of DevOps, and this was on New Year's Eve as we were going into 2022. We were just in a pandemic, and as most of my friends would be out drinking, I'm sat at home going, right, how do we kickstart this year? And normally it's a fitness challenge for 90 days or something like that. This year was, no, what we're going to do is we're going to start a Git repository, and we're going to start loads of markdown files, and we're going to go through 12 or 13 different topics of DevOps, and we're going to not deep dive into them, but we're going to get a little bit, we're going to get the big picture. We're going to get some theory around that, and we're going to get some hands-on over all of these weird and wonderful words that we see in the industry. So there's a topic around Golang, but Golang not as a developer. I'm not a developer by any stretch, but what does a programming language look like from a DevOps point of view? We need to know. Maybe we need to know how to read the code, just to understand
Mhm.
it. Maybe we do need to understand how to create a little bit better than a bash script on how to achieve like some automation. There's Kubernetes in there, containerization, Linux, networking, all of that, and how it pertains to the DevOps topic. And so that was the first year. It was 110,000 words. It was basically a blog a day for 90 days. We fast forward to 2023, and instead of me doing that, and I missed out so much around security, and I think the world missed out on. If you think about 2022, DevOps was the thing. DevSecOps was the new thing as we went through 2023 or 2022 into 2023. So I went out, spoke to some friends, and they as SMEs, they subject matter experts, they came out and they provided the blog posts for each day of their section for the 2023 edition. And then just recently, like of March the 31st, we finished 90 days again. But we couldn't just do like, let's write a load more things. I wanted to change up what that was. So we put out a call for papers, and we actually had 91 sessions from 91 different people. It was 91 for a reason. It was a leap year this year. So yeah, we had all of those sessions on YouTube as well. So it was about changing the the format of what it was.
Right on. So we're just taking the different topics and then dedicating a day to each of those topics so that you can do, a little bit deeper than just hello world on those, and kind of walk away with a, not like a expert level knowledge, but like a conversational knowledge of that topic.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, it was probably 7 days for each of the topics. So we kicked off
Okay.
the first 90 days in 2022 was what is DevOps. Like I've seen your videos, Will, that kind of touches on this, and it was about like, so what is DevOps and why DevOps and where did it even come from, and why are we talking about it in 2022 when it's been around since 2009, like that sort of thing, and some of the use cases. And it's always the use cases that we hear about. Oh, it's Netflix did this, AWS did that. And so I wanted to actually, well, what about the company down the road? How are they using DevOps? So we went into a little bit more of a DevOps for the normal company, not the fan company. And then we kick off for 7 days of like, so the first topic is Golang, learning a programming language. And there was a mixed, I got mixed feedback on that, because really, and I'd be interested in what your programming language of choice would be to learn first from a DevOps point of view. I expect I know what the answer would be, but I'd be interested in your takes.
Yeah, for me, my answer is very nuanced. Like, my first answer is, what's the team you're working with using? Because if like you're working with a full stack JavaScript shop, just go with that so that you have some more connective tissue with the rest of your team. I think that's going to serve you much, much more long term in helping that team than learning Go and being like the outsider who's always trying to sell this. So I approach it from a conversational point of view. Where am I going to have the most conversation touch points with the people that I'm supporting? And so whatever their primary stack is would be my first choice, assuming that, they're not using Java. I wouldn't recommend Java as a first language. But if the field's wide open, I think I would just stick with, I would recommend Go. It's just,
Okay.
to me, it feels very manageable to pick up as a first language.
Nothing to add, Warren.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Will's nailed the most important part here, which is really the context. I mean, if we think about what DevOps is, it's really about merging of the mindsets and applying it no matter where you are. So meeting the team where they're at. And I don't think I often will advise companies and their engineering departments are using all sorts of strange things that I would never personally use. Will mentioned Java, but I've seen Ruby and everything else. And there are some languages that I prefer to use personally more than others, and I see sort of uh, concrete problems that show up because of the language of choice, and you can maybe overcome those by picking something different, right? The sorts of problems you'll end up with a non-strong type language versus ones such as Go or Rust or whatever. There are concrete benefits of using those, but when you think about here's where the team is at, what is the problem that we need to solve, trying to pull in the tools to help you do it and not necessarily going out and changing the language. Although, I've seen often there is this problem where a team may not be able to embody the mindset that comes with DevOps because potentially of the language or frameworks that they're using. They're just not conducive to thinking about those things. There's still a very much built in, you use this language thinks about throwing stuff over the wall to another team to go and run it. You're going to run into a problem there, and sometimes you got to change the tools to match what you want. But if we're looking on the other side, what would I pick personally? I've been super successful with JavaScript, TypeScript, and Rust, but I don't think the domain is super critical there.
No, and you both hit on it, right? And the reason I chose Go because Veeam Kasten, an acquisition that we'd made in 2020, they were using Golang to write their cloud native product. I didn't know Go. In fact, I didn't know any programming language. So that seemed like a good start. But the amount of people that were like, this should be Python, this should be Python, or this should be something else. And I get that. But to both of your point, I chose it for that reason. And I documented. And bearing in mind, we're on I think we start this on day 7, the first time I've ever done this. And this is me writing notes. Like, me and my mum know about this. That's it. So it didn't turn out to be the 25,000 plus stars that are on GitHub for it now. Like, I can understand that then. But we covered Python in the second year as well. But and there's obviously so many more. But it was for me. It was so I could actually, and it wasn't for me to become a Go developer, because I think the point is a programming language for DevOps is very different to being an app developer, in that I just want to be able to read this language. I want to be able to potentially make a CLI or some sort of tool that helps with my day-to-day job. And the fact is that Go is like a great language for that. So are others. But I chose it for them reason. I did point that out in there as well. But basically, just to go back to why, like how these modules, if you will, are like set up, is that the first day we talk about programming languages in DevOps. So I went away and I researched that generally I would have spent about an hour, 2 hours watching YouTube videos. A lot of yours will as well, and others, the smart people, and they're all referenced at the bottom of the days as well, right? I'm not, again, this wasn't anything for me. This is about providing structured learning that we didn't have. And I still don't think, I'm not the answer to this, is that, learn DevOps. But Will's DevOps journey and yours, Warren, and mine are all different. And if we work at 3 different companies, your DevOps responsibilities are very different as well. Like, we might touch the same similar things, but everything is a little bit different. And it's more of a mindset on, how can I learn quickly to understand the benefit of this? And if it's not right, throw it in the bin. Let's go again. Like, that's the premise. But I couldn't find that one YouTuber that was like, fixing my addiction to YouTube following the pandemic, that so many people had. So I thought, I'm going to create something that at least will help me, because I forget everything. So I want to be able to go back and reference this. So we go through the big picture. We go through a bit of theory about what Go is, how it works, how it compiles, blah, blah, blah. Then we get hands-on and we start interacting with the Twitter API that's now been changed. So that I need to update that. But it was basically a little Twitter bot that you could write a bit more of that, like 201 of the hello world. How can I interact with an API to make it do something as and when something happens? So that long-winded, that was what we started with. But each one of those sections, those modules, takes that big picture, bit of theory, and then some hands-on to that.
I mean, I think really shouldn't undersell this here. I mean, you've got a repository on GitHub that has over 26,000 stars, and
Which
it
is
really
wild.
which I know for sure, and in such a short period of time, it seems. And it's really just you going and learning these individual topics one after another one to a sufficient degree that other people can go in and see it and get that same sort of learning. And really, it's not about the maybe physical tool, but the real mindset that's behind DevOps and have a whole new approach that they can take to even their own projects or back to their workplace and share it with others.
Yeah, it's been wild. A wild 3 years, that's for sure. And bringing on all of the community members to do the talks. Like, if you look at some of those sessions, some of those are like gold. They're the sessions that you'd go to if you went to conferences. They're the ones that you'd actively like. Oh, I need to see this. And perspective is so important in our DevOps world. Is that, again, just because I do something my way and that's my responsibility, it won't be the same as what Will does or you, Warren. So seeing all these different sessions on AWS, Azure, Terraform, Pulumi, like all of the, I guess, competing products, but with a bit of an overlap as well. Like it's about picking your horse, right? But you can swap horses halfway through. Like the amount I've done with Pulumi and HashiCorp as well. So yeah, I just I'm in a position as well at Veeam where they give me the opportunity to do this, which is incredible. You think 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, I was purely focused on storage and virtualization. I'd done a bit of Terraform, I'd done a bit of Ansible, I'd done a bit of cloud, but that was it. Throw me into this gave me the opportunity to then go and learn a whole new community, a whole new ecosystem, whilst still getting paid for it. Like I started a new job without having to start a new job. So it's incredible. Like all of the community, there's a Discord channel as well with over 1,000 people in there. It's brilliant. And like already being asked, what are we doing next year? Oh, well, we have to take a year to figure that one out.
Right.
You touched on something I think really important, and that's especially in the DevOps mindset sort of corner of the world that we end up finding ourselves in. We don't usually have experienced mentors that are within the same company or same organizational area as us, and it can be quite the challenge of actually figuring out how to level up effectively within that scope. And my usual recommendation is, where are you getting information from the outside world that's happening outside your company? And there's usually silence there. Like, obviously there's some amount of challenge to engage yourself with content or other companies because not everything is public. So going out and actually finding good streams of information is for sure actually a challenge, but it's something that everyone who has a DevOps, is embodying the DevOps mindset really needs to do in some regard.
Interesting you say that as well. Like, so the dev stats that you can get on the repo, I'll let the audience go and look up the big companies that are behind it, and that they've not contacted or anything, but there's some pretty big vendors out there that are using this for what I can only see as a bit of an onboarding, like an onboarding kind of course for their people.
Interesting.
To be fair, I don't do any sponsorship or anything like that on there, so there's no real way for them to reach out for that.
I could imagine companies reaching out to you though and asking you to come and actually speak or pick some of your favorite modules that are fit for the company and getting to actually talk through or workshop them.
So if it all goes wrong at Veeam, maybe that's the way to go. But so, and I made it quite clear earlier on that none of this is sponsored content. So if I chose Argo CD, it's because I wanted to. There was no influence at all. And I had another. How can I put this without naming names? But everyone will know if I say it. A typical database company that have a very strong licensing opinion. They reached out about their cloud infrastructure, and they wanted me to cover them, and they'd pay, and that's what. And I said, but that's going to lose the spirit of the whole process. Like I could do, and I can say this because I'm a HashiCorp ambassador, and it wasn't them, but like I've suggested, I could do 7 days of HashiCorp. We could go through 7 products. We could do 10 days of HashiCorp, I think, probably. And that'd be a great idea, but it'd have to be organic content. It wouldn't be you tell me what to write, you pay me to do that, because you lose the trust with the community a lot of the time with that element of why we do this stuff. And really, the whole, again, it goes back to the reason why I did this. Why did I start this? Because obviously when you start a project, you start with a logo and you start with a domain. That's before you even get into any of the hard work.
Right.
But it was all about learning. It was all about me just learning in public. I've been around several different communities, virtualization, VMware, NetApp from a storage perspective. HashiCorp was then there on the edge before I jumped into the more of the cloud and cloud native world. And there's never been like I had a conversation about this the other week about it's all about putting down the ladder. Use the ladder to get up. You might have used some videos, some content somewhere. And there's some people in this world that will absolutely take that ladder with them and they're never going to drop it down. If you can drop that down and help one person, then it's going to be massively impactful for that person wherever they are in the world, right? And I've had that same ethos from doing blogs about OpenStack 15 years ago. Is that even if you document something, blog something, and it only helps one person, then it's worth doing. Again, same for this, right? That's why I did it on an open GitHub repo. Was if it helps one person, then it's worth doing, and it helped me as well. So that was why.
Yeah, and I think it's admirable just to avoid the sponsorship route because, you know, like you're putting in a ton of time and effort on this, like not only just to learn your own thing, but because you're trying to do it in public and you're trying to share it so that it is helpful for someone else. So that puts a lot of additional steps in achieving a task, you know, because you could have done this yourself in a notepad doc on your desktop and gotten all the benefits there, but choosing to share it, you know, adds an extra level of work to it. That's a huge time commitment. And I think that's part of the allure of doing sponsored videos or taking on sponsorships, because it helps you feel like you're justifying some of that time. But at the same time, I agree with you. Whenever you choose to take on the sponsorship, in my mind, that changes the scope of work, because now instead of creating something for me to share, I have to create something for the sponsor that represents their brand. And those are sometimes 2 entirely different pieces of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's a day, and I'll let people go and find the day, but where I'm trying to get not Ansible, I'm trying to get Jenkins up and running in a Docker container, which it clearly wasn't built for this situation, right? It was
No.
But we're like, even in the comments, I know there's a paragraph there going, I couldn't get this to work. Then there's an update. I got this to work, but I had to do this, and this. And that I left it all in because people will have that same problem. They'll have that same issue. But if that was Jenkins paying for said blog or said YouTube video, they wouldn't want me to fail. They'd want it to be clean, crisp, cut. Like, this is how it works. Now, I know that's not fair to all vendors or projects out there. Some will like to see the warts and all, but the majority would 100% want it to be clean cut, and look how good our software is.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
I think there's a huge brand component to this. Like when you're going out and you're creating content for the world, what does that say about the person who is creating that content realistically? And you take that with you when you go somewhere else. If you want to be someone who sells your content, that's your job or that's who you want to be, then there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be someone who creates publicly available content, that becomes part of your brand. And I feel like at the upper echelon levels of software engineering, there is this expectation that you are positively contributing to the community. And I feel like going out and selling your content isn't necessarily aligned with that. Being able to provide it for free or at conferences or through trainings, workshops, etc., there's a very different perspective there. And I don't think we can get as far with just only sponsored content, as you said, for the obvious reasons of companies paying for. I mean, if you're doing that, then you're likely going to end up competing with LLMs in the future, who are going to optimize for just getting the work done rather than the actual, learning experience.
Oh,
Yeah.
not an issue. No LLM can butcher the English language as badly as I can. I've got that market cornered.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the amount of contributions on the repo as well for a native English guy making mistakes. Like it's a green tick, it's a green box, right? People have, well, the mind-blowing thing is not only that, like there is a hell of a lot of spelling and grammar mistakes that have been corrected, but equally it's been translated into different languages. If you go to the repo and you go to 2022, up the top there you'll see it's been translated into Vietnamese, Chinese, Polish. It's not ridiculous, it's amazing, but it's ridiculous.
That's so cool.
I just hope hope they're not writing anything bad about me.
Right. So what kind of feedback? I mean, obviously with 26,000 stars, there's been, you've hit a chord in the community. It's definitely appreciated content. Have you gotten like any success stories or like really cool feedback moments? Because I know just in the YouTube videos I've done, there's been a few people who have reached out to me over the years and said, hey, I watched your videos and did the things that you suggested in this particular video, and it helped me land my first job, and to me, like, that was just mind blowing. Like, I don't know what the rest of my life holds, but to hear something like that, like you had that kind of impact on someone's life, like that's crowning achievement to me. So what have you gotten back for feedback from this?
So similar, Will. Similar things, like people that are just starting out of college and they'll use the repo and I landed my first job. And also I think personally that's brilliant, like the same as you, Will. Like to think that I would ever have an impact on anyone's life is incredible. Like I never thought, it's probably the same as you, is that I never thought that would be a thing. I didn't think I'd build something that would impact someone. But equally on a personal level as well, it's enabled me to go and speak at events. Like I've always done public speaking from virtualization storage, like VMworld before it was VMware Explore, all of that. I've done the yearly conference trips, but I hadn't done the DevOps conference trips. I hadn't been to HashiConf. I hadn't been to other We Are Developers, for example. And I strongly believe that doing this gave me a little bit more credibility to be able to go and do that. And I think to your point, Warren, I think also the amount of people that I've had reach out to me saying, like, if it doesn't work out at Veeam, like, just like give us a ring, like, because it's a community angle that they see that they could use within their efforts in the community as well. but yeah, I think overall it's about helping people. That's the biggest thing. And then the thought leadership, or the ability to be validated to go and speak at these events is nice, and quite frankly strange as well. But people speak about it. I think the one that really hits home for me is the HashiConf when it was in Amsterdam 2 years ago. I was speaking there, and it was they asked me to speak about 90 Days of DevOps. It was like a 15-20 minute type community session, and it was equally quite strange to talk about it then. And bearing in mind that's 2 years ago, we'd only just finished that first one. We were probably on 10,000 stars, and then having people come up to you and say, "This is amazing, can't believe I haven't seen it." And to your initial point, Will, like, you only hear about it on Twitter or on X. Like, I need to be better at sharing this stuff as well elsewhere.
That's the hard part, I think, because that requires a completely different set of skills to promote your work, and you have to learn those, and it feels very awkward to learn those, especially whenever you take this from the approach of like, I'm just doing this to maintain my own skill set in my chosen career path, and then you turn that around. You're like, oh, how do I promote myself and market my content that was never really meant to be content anyway? Yeah. And I remember like one of the key moments for me was the first time I had to write a bio for a talk I was giving, and you write your own bio in the third person. And, to me, that was just like blue screen of death in the brain, just couldn't wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get exactly the same. Anything about myself is like, to your point, Warren, like whatever this is, it just feels strange of like how big it's become, or even like, and ultimately I'm a pessimist at heart anyway, in that you look at those 25,000 stars, and I just like, are they important? Are they just vanity metrics? If that was software, you'd be up there with one of the biggest. Like, and I'm like, that's crazy. So yeah, it's an interesting, and I've seen others as well do like follow that into like creating content, sharing in public, and all of that good stuff. And yeah, it's been it's been good. Like people cloning the repository and then going off and doing their own journey, which was kind of the idea as well. In that, if you could build a template repo for people to go and walk and talk the same thing, you go and learn, and then you get a perspective, and then we start sharing lots of different perspectives. We're all going to learn a lot more. And Warren, actually, you brought up a good point, and someone else said about this. Are you worried about LLMs having all of this information? I'm like, well, I didn't make it up. This information is fully available. If you go to the bottom of each day, there's smarter people than me talking about this stuff all over the internet, and there's heaps of documentation that touches on all of this. If an LLM can take 90 Days of DevOps and make things easier, let's go. Like, that's only a good thing as well. So, yeah.
For sure. So one thing I want to talk about with you, because you've got, your role at Veeam, and then you're creating this on the side. And then I know that you're also active physically. So how do you structure your day, or what's your thought process for balancing those different areas of your life?
No, that's a good one. I don't know if I balance anything, but and for anyone that follows me on any social media, you'll know that I spend more time on a plane than I do in my own bed, or at least in a different country. And the one thing I absolutely love about working for Veeam, and I'm sure other companies are like it, like my opportunity is, or my goal or my responsibility at Veeam is to raise awareness and drive some sort of adoption to our software. Now, we have community edition and open source projects that to me is still driving adoption. And then we obviously have paid for products as well. And raising awareness is what I can do best by talking at events, talking about what we do, some cool use cases that we see out there in the field. And that means jumping on a plane generally and giving those sessions at things like Red Hat Summit, KubeCon, HashiConf, and others. But the other great thing about Veeam is that, well, every day's different, and you could wake up at 8 o'clock on Monday morning and you think this is what we're going into, and then by 9 o'clock it's completely different, and your day changes. Like every day can be different at Veeam, and that's the exciting bit. And because over the last 10 years, I've been at Veeam for 9.5 years now. So I started and we only had virtual machine backup, VMware backups, and now we have we can back up everything. So I can flip and change, and there's all the different communities for each of those different services, and diving into that, learning something new, being able to just that variety is the win for me to keep that. Now, the one thing that I've started this year, or actually just before Christmas, because I've stopped playing rugby, is at least moving 5K a day. So walking 5K a day or running 5K a day has been I have to do that because sometimes you can have I've just spun off 10 of those different things that we've got. That becomes overwhelming and I don't know what number it is, whether it's 12 or 15 things on my plate, but one of those numbers sends me over the edge, and I'm sure you're the same, right? So being able to go for a walk somewhere and just out and about somewhere else, or run, it just gives you that level set, that reset. But equally, I don't work 9 to 5. I don't think many of us do anymore. I think it's a nice, when it's light we work, and when it's dark we sleep. But I don't think that matters anymore. I think we just get stuff done.
I thought for sure you were going to say when it's dark you also work, because
depends on the week, right? Or time zone, for sure.
For sure.
I mean, my number is 2. I feel like if I got something critical going on, something else trying to vie for my attention, I have to be very careful about pulling that in. I think I'm in a very unique position, though, compared to lots of people, where I get to push things on other people. So I have to be careful about that. But yeah, for sure, things that vie for your attention is very difficult to even keep track of them all. I was actually talking to Will about this before we started the stream, about multitasking is a death knell, really. We as humans can't really do it that effectively. Your priority list, you do one at a time until you're sort of done, but you're never done. There's the next thing on the list. So rigorously prioritizing and pulling out what those things are important. And I think there's a lot to be said for your subconscious, because I'm totally with you. I go on short little walks to clear my mind, my conscious mind, while subconsciously I'm working on some difficult problem that doesn't require me to write it down or look at visuals. Can be really, really helpful, especially when the nature of the work we're doing, it's not just write some code in some IDE somewhere, but it's think deeply about a problem and how it should look like and what that actually means and how to take the next step. And so while you say that you don't have anything super original there, that you pull the content from somewhere, I think what is important is how you think about the problem, which I do think may be unique to everyone involved, and I think that's important and worth remembering.
So back to doing a 5K every day. I'm going to dig on this. Do you listen to music when you do that, or podcasts, or go?
If I'm
go
running,
naked?
if I'm running, I'll listen to music. If I'm walking, it depends on where I'm walking. If I'm walking on a treadmill in the gym or in the living room, I will. That's YouTube time, but it's not DevOps or tech YouTube time. That's, although Jeff Geerling seems to sneak in there, because he does some good home lab stuff that I tend to watch, and yeah, maybe a podcast or two. But I spend a lot of time in a car as well, driving to the airport. I'm about 90 minutes away from from the airport. It's a great time to listen to some really good podcasts, right?
For sure. Yeah. So how you've been with Veeam for 9 years, which I feel like is pretty unusual in our industry to be with the same company that long. What's the reason behind that?
So I feel like I've had 3, maybe 4 different jobs since I've been at Veeam. So I started as an SE, so systems engineer. I would go out and keep our salespeople honest, and show prospects what we do. How do we protect this? What do we do? How do we do it? I was only doing it for 18 months, but in that 18 months, I was still creating content, and I was still almost telling stories, right? The whole point, I would say, if you had to define what my job is, it's about telling stories. It's about telling Veeam stories that I hear out in the field where much smarter people than me suffer so that they have a story to tell. And then they tell me the story and I simplify that, put it into a demo, some sort of story. After 18 months, I moved into what we call now the product strategy group, or the office of the CTO. And this was full blown, go anywhere, make noise, raise awareness, speak to engineering, build the product the way it needs to be for the field, go and speak to customers, blah, 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 right? Be part of the community. We have a great community around Veeam. Veeam just works. You've heard that tagline, hopefully. And yeah, we have some absolute fanboys who love Veeam technologies, which is brilliant. So be present there, listen to them. What's their feedback is great as well, and then feed that back into engineering or product management. So yeah, that's the 2 jobs. Then in the same group, we made an acquisition of a company called Kasten. Kasten is focused on Kubernetes backup. So PVCs, running applications, databases inside of Kubernetes, or even outside if you're using RDS alongside with your application, we're protecting that. We made that purchase in October 2020. The parachute got put on my back to go and make noise, go and be in that community about everything, all things Kubernetes. Like, whoa, like I've never done containerization yet. So this is the real start of the journey. You'll see where the DevOps thing comes in as well as we go through it. But yeah, parachute comes in, I go in, I'm still very wet behind the ears. I still am today, I feel. And that was my job, is be all things focused on cloud native. And I ended up running some co-located events at KubeCon called Cloud Native Data Management Day, and we had some really good speakers talking about databases on Kubernetes, databases outside of Kubernetes, just data in general around that. Then probably, well, it must be 2 and a bit years ago, I got handed some more stuff to look after and talk about, and it kind of fit, because speaking to all of these Kubernetes admins or even developers that were using Kubernetes, the trend was they were never exclusively using just Kubernetes. They were using virtual machines with databases on because the database was too hard to containerize. It was too important for everything else, because traditionally we took that expensive Oracle database and we threw everything into that. In the cloud native world, we don't need to do that, but that doesn't stop the plane still having to fly, right? So anyway, so I got given the remit of now go and look after our cloud products, our Veeam backup for AWS, Azure, and Google, and come up with stories to tell around that. So I did, and then fast forward is now we're looking at what is Veeam's cloud strategy, whilst also still trying to raise awareness, drive adoption of everything that we're doing. So that's really, so I think why 9 years, or how, it's because I've had 3 to 4 different jobs within the company. to be fair, I've only reported into 3 different people as well, and all in the same structure as well. But yeah, it's strange as well. When I was in my English class at school, and I'm sure you guys are the same in the States, you stood up and you read a chapter of the book or a couple of pages of the book out loud to the rest of your class. I was so scared. Like I would almost have sick days because of that. And now I get to like speak to you guys or speak in front of audiences at events. It's a funny. This imposter syndrome is such a funny situation.
No, I can totally get that. As long as your career is changing in some way, migrating from one area to another one, and having those different jobs, even over a long tenure, the brand of the company that you're working for is sort of less relevant in a way, because your role is growing with you. And maybe on that, I might ask, in the context of the 90 Days of DevOps, has there been like some particular area that you really enjoyed learning more than others, that maybe comes out more, or is, more fleshed out, like you see people gravitating towards more than some of the other areas, or was particularly interesting for you?
So for me personally, it was around databases, learning more about databases, because I was in the traditional shop where Microsoft SQL, Oracle, and maybe we started to see a bit of Mongo, but they were the three de facto databases, maybe some MySQL and Postgres. But now if you look at the cloud native ecosystem and the amount of databases that we have available to us, it's incredible. Like you can really pick and choose the right tool for the right job. And I feel like that could be the next space for like some huge big hitter that really changes what we do with data. And I've always been like a massive fan around like data visualization and being able to use data for something good. So we're obviously backing up a lot of stuff. I've worked on prototypes where I can take that data from our backup and glean some insight out of that. So those were the 2 big areas in I guess they span 2022 and 2023, 2 different topics that like I think I probably could do a few more days on there, because I was learning a lot more about like what is AWS Neptune and just things that I've personally never spoke to a customer that uses that and needs to protect it. So it's good. It's better that it's not glazed by, oh, this is a customer meeting, you have to talk about this. It's actually my interest on data. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think Golang, and if I had a chance to change, if I could go back and change it, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have started talking about a programming language up front. Like we started talking about it here because it's the first module. I would have moved that because I feel like that is a barrier to entry. To think that someone, oh, I'm going to learn DevOps today. They come in, they've never learned a programming language. Oh, we've got to go and learn Golang or Python or something. And you're like, maybe that was just a little, like, maybe I should have moved that down. Maybe we should have started with the Linux module, which was second, and then the networking. And then we should have got on to like containerization. And then I feel like there's a better flow that I would have used. But the programming language, do I really need to learn a programming language to be in DevOps? Well, actually, yeah, no, you could probably get away with not, like, until way down the line. Can you write a bash script? Are we classing that as a programming language? Probably not, but it gets a job done, and it might just be enough. If you can't write a bash script though, then probably don't bother learning Golang yet. That's kind of, yeah. So that would be like, if I had any regrets, that would be one to move.
It's interesting you bring that up, actually. I feel like it's easier to learn a programming language than it is to try to write a bash script correctly. And I think there is something to be said about the complexity of understanding what you're deploying or what you're running or what you're evaluating can be quite complex. And I get the sense that learning a programming language is something that has, while more complex to work with, has a much smaller impact. Like I can write a small little app on my machine and not have to think about what the data layer is going to be like, or what of the thousands of different kinds of databases out there, providers, which one to pick, or even which cloud to go to, or how to deploy things, or credit cards being involved, and money to actually pay for those resources. Where I feel like all of that does come in to when you're working more in a DevOps space. And so I can totally see if you don't program, here maybe is an easy way to get into it rather than immediately start trying to think about what you're doing, because I think there is this hesitation, or even maybe a crutch in the world, where it's like, I want to go learn something, infrastructure. What should I do? What should I go? I was like, well, what's your business problem? What are you actually trying to do? And then there's this disconnect of, well, I don't know. I just want to learn how databases fit together. I'm like, well, it's a good start if you have a need, like, hey, I want to build a recommendation engine or a website or something like that. And then I feel like you're sort of stuck if you don't have at least willing to go and take the step forward of building something out.
Yeah, absolutely. You just made me think about, so I have a lot of ideas, I'm sure you guys do as well, about little project ideas. And I know this goes out to a fair few people as well, but I'd be interested in what people think about source code repository backup, completely changing the direction. But think about GitHub, think about GitLab. How do we protect that? And is it important? Just to go on the business outcomes. I had that conversation this morning. I thought, I know two people that will have an answer, or have an idea, or a theory on that.
Well, Will wants you to just, your code is backed up directly in production because that's where you edit it, right?
Right, right. CI/CD means Vim on the production server.
And it's already replicated to multiple machines, right? Because you need to scale up. So you have, all your code automatically replicated to, tens, maybe hundreds, thousands of machines already.
No, but that's actually a problem I've never thought of. With GitLab for sure, because when I think of GitLab, I think of running your own GitLab servers on your own infrastructure. So there is a definite backup need there. For GitHub, though, I'm paying for the service. I'm assuming, and maybe that's my fault, I'm assuming that they're backing it up.
I mean, realistically, you are paying for that. Then there's the second question of whether or not it's happening. And I think we know of recent incidents involving some companies who we thought would have had a better strategy to avoid full incident related to individual customers losing all of their data. So, realistically, it's something that you could be concerned with. I think understanding the business continuity strategy that your company has or needs to have, and what the risk is and what the impact is of that. For instance, if you have lots of engineers who are working across multiple repositories, you have well-defined teams with a well-defined remit, I bet you've got the source code cloned N times already. It's unlikely you actually do need something stronger than that. However, you're going to try to get FedRAMP certification or ISO 27001. You may actually need to do something else. And so I have seen people run, if they're using GitHub or GitLab managed, they'll run like Git or something else, or another Git provider, and run some sort of script to back that up. Because while it's actually, I think, a really easy thing to do to actually achieve backing it up, the thing that another provider gets you is sort of the insurance. You want to be able to say, hey, while we can do it, we don't want to, because you want to be able to have someone pay you or compensate you when it does go wrong. And if you're in charge of your own backup strategy, then you're almost putting more of the eggs in that same basket. And so you really want to be careful there if you do decide to take ownership of it.
So I feel like there's a story here, Michael. Like that didn't just come out of nowhere.
So I wrote a blog post. So I get asked about it all the time, literally more than any other feature request. And we as a company have never gone down that road because, and I think to your point, Will, like it's a SaaS, and I'm talking about GitHub here, but we all trust Microsoft, don't we? Microsoft own GitHub. We all trust them.
Yeah. They have all
So
my data. I'm counting on them.
yeah, and if they turn around and charge you on a per repo basis, we're going to get rid of a load of homegrown projects pretty
Right.
damn quick because of that. I just like I wrote a blog post where basically I'm using Canister. Canister is an open source project that we maintain that is more of an application specific framework, and you can push this blueprint to go and basically interact with any API. And there's a great open source project out there called GitHub, GICK up. And I use that basically to go and protect it and send it to S3. Just to say, look, we can do it. Like, if you want to do it this way, art of the possible. But even then, you go to GitHub and you go to the marketplace or the App Store, whatever it's called. I think there's either 57 or 157 backup tools natively in their marketplace. So to your point, Warren, there's definitely a use case, but people just want to offload it to someone else. Like, can you just look after that? But that was really the only. I realized I was talking a lot and needed to switch gears and change it into something else. So I wanted to get your guys' view on that as a topic.
You can't do that. We're here to grill you, not the other way around.
Now think about what other services or what other SaaS, because you'd be wrong in thinking that GitHub back up your data. It's a shared responsibility model. So the data and the information that you've put in there is your responsibility. They'll keep the service up and running for even free tier users, but they're not going to back up your data. The data is your responsibility.
I mean, I think we have to sort of dive into what we mean by backup. So, we're talking about what is the durability of the repositories we give to GitHub. I mean, I think everyone would believe that it's as durable as possible, which is different from if you accidentally delete the data from there, whether or not, like if you accidentally go and delete a repository, what's your remediation strategy there? So, if that's the risk, then for sure you need something else. If GitHub does go down in some way permanently, 0.0001% or whatever, what's your business continuity strategy? But if someone came to me today and said, hey, your data could get accidentally deleted from GitHub or GitLab or whatever the provider you're using, and they're not going to do anything, like they have no strategy to do that. That data isn't replicated across at least 2 physical drives somewhere. I think they're going to lose a lot of customers, just listening to this podcast.
100%, right? And they're going to keep that infrastructure up and running. And the accidental deletion is kind of hard. Like, we've all deleted a repo on there. Like, you have to go through some hoops to make that happen. But what about this as a scenario? Like, so hopefully all 3 of us have MFA on our GitHub account as access, but it's a SaaS service, right? So anyone could get, if someone bad or malicious gained access, or a malicious internal user had access to a repo and they decided to delete, or not even delete. Let's look at the open source issue that happened to, is it XY a couple of months ago?
Yeah, XZ, the compression library.
Yes. Yeah. And that not the same scenario, but you let people into maintain, they can make changes, blah, blah, blah. Someone makes a change that's malicious to the code, or potentially many different malicious activities within that. Do you want to go back to all of your developers' laptops and hope that Git clones have happened? Or do you want a point in time restore? I think we're all onto something. But I think it's an interesting topic. So that's where I was going.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's one of those things that's a long pole, like it's a very long tail responsibility. Like, there are tons of companies not even thinking about that, and then there are things that they should be doing first. Like, they still have passwords as the requirement for authentication for their UIs for their users, and so like please do something about that first before you even start to think about, source code backup. Or,
Yeah.
you mentioned MFA, like companies that don't, have passwords but no MFA, right? It's like passwords are like 80, like if you have passwords as any sort of authentication, like 86% chance it will get popped in the next 2 years. It's like ridiculous. And yet they're thinking about these long tail things. Oh, well, what if one of our developers like exposes their source code or takes it with them? I'm like, that is not the biggest risk that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the CEO writing his or hers password on the post-it note in their office that's the biggest risk.
But they
yeah,
have to so that their assistant has access to the password when they don't make it into the
Oh.
office.
Oh, no.
exactly. And their calendar, obviously, they need to be able to get into their Zoom account.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go down the risk page right now, I think it's the deep fakes being sent to your finance or accounting department on behalf of the executive team, saying that they should pay out an invoice to a third-party company, and they go and do that. And so I think that's the biggest risk to a company right now is direct attacks on their wallet more so than anything else.
That was so that reminded me of another massive knee-jerk change of direction on I watched a YouTube video of Ryan Gosling explaining the 101 of LLMs. It wasn't, and he's got a ridiculously huge left arm. Yeah, he's nailed it. He's really good at explaining because someone has put that data in there, but a huge deep fake. Yeah, that is a bigger risk. So yeah, fully. Just to get away from structured open source learning as far as possible. Source code repository backup and deep fake Ryan Gosling's.
Well, I mean, I think it's super relevant, right? You have such a good source of knowledge here that would be a shame to lose in some way. And I think, even GitHub has this idea of the Arctic code backup program where they're locking it in some vault. Hypothetically, I don't know what that actually amounts to. So I can imagine, I didn't check, but maybe you've got an award here associated with this that says it's being saved somewhere important. I don't know what they did with their awards.
Yeah, I've got a badge for contributing to the Arctic Vault program, although I have no idea what that program is or what I did to contribute to it.
Oh, it should actually tell you. Like mine was like contributing to some AWS source code and some things that were used on like one of the NASA rovers.
Oh, right on. There you go.
You got to know what achievements you've unlocked well.
I just saw a bunch of colorful badges there one day and hovered over them and then moved on with my life. Like I try not to get involved in side quests.
How do you know what the main quest is?
So, funny story, because at the end of every day, the last thing I do at night is I write down the 5 things that I want to be focused on for the next day.
Oh, wow.
And anything that's not one of those 5, I just ignore. Barring, like, hey, we've got a production outage, I can't really go, oh, sorry, didn't schedule that. I'll see if I can get it on tap for tomorrow. But I use that, and I've used that method for years, and it's been the only way for me to stay focused and on track.
No, I think that's a really great idea, actually.
I've tried every electronic version of it I can find. I've even tried like just doing it in notebooks, but for me personally, the only thing that works is the 3x5 card. And then it's just either on my desk or when I leave my desk, I put it in my pocket. So no matter where I'm at, I know what I'm supposed to be focused on.
That's the legacy units for anyone who doesn't know. He's saying inches, which not centimeters.
No, it's 3 centimeters by 5 centimeters.
That's pretty small there.
Yeah, it keeps me from taking on too much each day. By limiting the writing space, my day has gotten so much better.
I think there's something that goes, when you're actually physically writing it out, I do find that has an imprint in you more than, say, typing it into it. So like when I'm in my meetings, I tend to have a notebook and I write things down. Actually, it's not like saved. I usually write on a piece of scrap paper and then throw it away after the meeting. And it does wonders for me realistically to remember what I've gone or what I've discussed. What really has nothing to do with the medium in which I've chosen.
Yeah, agreed. Physically writing something increases my retention and comprehension immensely. What about you, Michael? You digital or analog?
So a bit of both. You can probably see there's paper all here. Yeah, so bit of both. But because I'm constantly, it seems, or at least recently, on an aeroplane, there's a lot of notes and a lot of draft emails actually that I seem to use. I use email more for that than I do actually communicating.
No. Definitely got the emails in my outbox for sure. When I'm traveling, there's no alternative, unfortunately.
Excellent. Well, should we move on and do some picks?
I think that's a good idea.
All right, let's do it. What'd you bring, Warren?
Yeah. So I'm on my book rants. So this week is going to be Management 3.0 by Jürgen Appello. I found that very early on in my career, it was a great way to think about as an aspiring leader to how to build the work around a team and even move to an agile perspective. There are still companies out there that aren't doing agile, and whether it's not totally married to that aspect, it really does help you think through what to do in certain situations, how to prioritize work effectively at a team level, and I can't recommend it enough for those that are thinking about not just the code that they should write or what they should work on that day, but how to collaborate effectively, how to track that work, and prioritize requests that are coming in from either other teams or from the business.
Right on. Speaking of collaborating effectively, like right? Isn't that beautiful or not? Speaking of collaborating effectively, and then it goes completely dark. That's karma for you right there. No, I was going to say, speaking of collaborating effectively, like hearing is such a key part of that. And I have terrible hearing, like between just like the background roar and tinnitus with the really loud ringing. It's really hard for me to hear. And I've had my hearing tested multiple times, and they say, "Oh, there's nothing that hearing aids can do for that. Best of luck to you." I'm like, okay, thanks. But I did get recently a pair of AirPods Pro 2, and they've got like a background noise reduction feature on them. And that's actually been super cool. So that's my pick for the week because it does a great job of like filtering out that roaring background noise, especially when you're in a big open environment, so that you can hear the conversation going on around you. The downside to it is that everyone sees you have AirPods in, so they assume that you're listening to the Adventures in DevOps podcast and not really interested in talking one-on-one. So that's the trade-off there. But that's going to be my pick of the week. Michael, what about you?
I guess mine goes. I know we spoke about the 5Ks a day, and I think like my background is rugby, knocking 7 bells of stuff out of people on a Saturday after a busy week of weird and wonderful things. Obviously, that's gone away. You're getting older. I can't really do that anymore. But that 5K a day, just as Warren kind of put it as well, is it just takes you out of that busy mode. And I massively encourage it to everyone should be moving anyway for health and fitness, but that brain rest as well. Like I get some of the best ideas when I'm at least 2.5K away from my house. Like, so just that mindfulness of escaping from something that you're potentially stuck on trying to fix takes you away from it. Like that seems to be working for me at the moment. I'm up to 150 odd days of continuous walking, or
Nice.
continuous 5K in the spirit of DevOps.
Nice.
Continuous.
That's why I asked you about listening to podcasts or music, because I've had a similar experience when I'm out on runs. It's number one, meditative, but number two, just so helpful for sorting the mental clutter and reflection. And I've gotten to the point now where I don't listen to anything, no music, no podcast, nothing, just out there, just me and my thoughts. And that's been pretty wild.
Yeah.
Don't laugh, Warren. What's the Homer Simpson quote? All right, brain, I don't like you and you don't like me, but it's just the two of us, so we got to get through this. Or let's get through this so I can get back to killing you with beer. Yeah, so that's I hear you on that. Like, getting out and moving is just great, not only physically, but it's so helpful mentally as well. And I would highly recommend at least giving it a shot without anything, just you and your thoughts, because it's going to be wild. But so there we go. Michael, thank you so much. I really enjoyed having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Would love to have you back at any point. Just hit us up and let us know. And for sure, when we're ready for I got to figure out what year this is 2024. So when we're ready for the 2025 edition of 90 Days of DevOps, I look forward to having you back.
Awesome. We'll figure out what it needs to be. I'm sure there'll be some LLMs and AI associated to it as the trend keeps going.
Right. Just ask ChatGPT to create it for you.
Yeah, there you go. Because there won't be any hallucinations in that.
Right. Awesome. Warren, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, of course.
And for all of our listeners, thank you for listening, and we will see y'all next week.